This new tool company asked me if I could review a few of their tools, and it's pretty good timing because I'm about to make some cabinets, and my cabinet jigs that I have now, they're not very good. Goingmake sent me a couple of these tools, and I was really impressed, so I went and bought a couple more off of Amazon myself. Let's take a look at this concealed hinge boring jig to start with. There's a solid set of instructions, clear and easy to understand, and pictures always help me. The packaging is well done, no chance of getting damaged in shipping. So I'm just doing a quick side-by-side comparison to the plastic concealed hinge jig that I own now. Definitely, I like the all-metal design of Goingmake. When I've used this bi-tool jig in the past, I can feel the plastic flexing as I'm drilling and always concerns me about not getting a clean bore. And there's actually a bearing in the drill guide, not just a bushing. The markings are significantly easier to read on the Goingmake jig, and it has a built-in clamp, which I think is really handy. They both have adjustment settings for the hinge offset as well as the screw hole locations. The Goingmake only has a pin setting for 3 inches from the end of the door, whereas the bi-tool jig has pin settings for both 3 inches and 4-inch options. However, with this scale here that the bi-tool jig doesn't have, you can pretty much set it to wherever you want. I'm always a little suspicious of scales like this that they might not be printed accurately, so just double checking, and it seems spot on. Okay, so let's get this thing set to use. It comes with a 35mm Forstner bit and a depth stop. I really like that it has a scale on the jig to help you get the depth stop set properly. That's a pretty cool feature. Okay, so I'm just looking at the directions that came with the hinges and it calls for a 3mm offset. So I set the pin setting to 3mm and I put the end pin at the 3-inch mark, which is fine for the door that I'm working on. So this jig has a bracket to attach a vacuum hose, which is pretty innovative. I don't think I've ever seen that on a concealed hinge jig before. Unfortunately, I don't have the right size hose adapter, and it's nice that if you're not going to use this feature that you can just remove the bracket from the jig and keep it out of your way. All right, with it all set up, I just clamp it on, clip the drill guide in, and go to town boring the hole. Next, I just drop in the screw hole alignment plate. This hinge calls for 9.5mm spacing on the screw holes, and you do need to make sure the alignment plate is in the proper way. The way this jig is designed seems like something that would be easy to mess up if you're not paying attention. And the drill bit for the screw holes is included with the jig. All right, looks great. The hinge fits perfectly. All right, so I got a chuckle out of this in the directions for maintenance of the jig. They recommend to clean the sawdust from the tool. Probably not a lot to maintain on this jig, and I guess they had to put something in that section of the directions booklet. Let's move on to the shelf pin jig. Again, it's got really good instructions, and this one comes with a hard shell case, which is really nice. The concealed hinge jig didn't have that. It includes a couple of drill bits and a stop collar. And the same with the previous jig. It's all metal, quality construction, really easy to read writing, and clearly marked pinhole offsets. There's more than enough adjustability on the pin locations, so being able to move the pinhole guides in either of 2 rows or the edge stops in 3 different locations. To get ready to use it, I'll set the stop collar on the drill bit so that the depth matches the shelf pins that I plan to use. There are a lot of different pointers and markers on the jig to help you get it aligned, but I just matched up the edge of the jig with my dado cut for the bottom of the cabinet, and it worked great. After the first hole is drilled, then place the pin in that hole and drill the rest of the holes. Now I just moved the jig to extend the row of holes, again just using the alignment pin in the last hole that I drilled. This went really quickly. Of course, I've accelerated the video here, but in real time, it took like less than 5 minutes for all of this. Okay, I've got the cabinet assembled now and just testing a shelf on it, and it fits perfectly. I do need a facer board on this shelf to cover up the plywood edges, so moving on to the next Goingmake jig I'm going to use for that. So I'm going to use this thin rip jig for the table saw to cut some edge bands for the shelves. The jig comes with a variety of bolts to mount it in a T-track, a T-slot, or just a normal 3/4 inch miter slot, which is what my saw has. And a pretty cool safety feature worth noting is that the roller only rolls forward and not backwards on this jig. So before using it, I'm going to try to calibrate this scale pointer. First, I set it so that it's just touching the saw blade tips. And the jig has these adjustable scale pointers for both imperial and metric, but the zero spot is nowhere near zero for my saw. Really no different than any other thin rip jig I've used. But it would be nice if there was a way to have zero match zero. Anyway, I set the metric scale pointer to 80 and the imperial scale pointer to 3 1/4, and those are the 0 points for my saw. And then, of course, I reposition the jig back in front of the saw blade before using it. I want to cut some 1/8 inch thin strips, so I move the slider by 1/8 of an inch. And then I just start cutting. And for each strip, I reposition the fence so that the workpiece just touches the roller on the thin rip jig. And yes, I definitely have the wrong cover plate on my saw for this. I really should have a zero clearance cover plate so that the thin pieces don't drop down into the saw like that. I've got 6 shelves in this cabinet that I'm making, so I cut 6 strips, each one exactly the same thickness, and really clean cuts, virtually no saw marks or burns. So I've got them glued onto the shelves at this point, and they look great. The next tool is this 3D miter square. Lots of things you can do with it. My green pencil with the fat lead doesn't fit down in the holes, but if you use a thin mechanical pencil, then this square is pretty handy at drawing a line at a fixed offset from the edge of your workpiece. You can, of course, use it to mark lines that are square to your workpiece, or set it in one of the preset angles using the angling pen. I'd be worried about losing this pen, but if you push it in all the way, it kind of sticks in place, and that's kind of nice. And I did check it to see if it's really square, and it is. And the scales are pretty accurate as well. And finally, Goingmake sent me these Benchdog hold down clamps. My workbench with Benchdog holes it's out of commission right now, so I'm bummed I can't try these out, but they look pretty nice. So overall, I'm pretty impressed with these tools. They seem to be an original design, not trying to copy some other tool manufacturer's design, like you see a lot of times with tools from China. They're well engineered with a lot of unique features. The manufacturing seems good. They're square and the scales are true. All metal design, no plastic. I really like the color, the black with the white writing. Yeah, they're keepers. Thanks so much for watching.